Good morning, Rev Heads.
Good morning, everybody.
I feel like
You have a cute catchphrase, and I just say,
Good morning.
hello.
I feel like there should be Rev Head T-shirts or something.
It's howdy doody time.
Yeah, I don't know. All right. Good morning and welcome to this Friday, June 26, 2020 edition of Pastor Mike and Pastor Bree present Fun with Faith.
Remember we used to do that.
I know.
That was the thing.
Like we always do that, but okay.
Well, no, we used to be we'd say it together.
Oh, did we?
Back when we met at the church, and it was very much like a Fun with Flags vibe, and we were steering into that skid.
Yeah. You want to try it again?
It'd be more awkward.
Pastor Mike and Pastor Bree present Fun with Faith.
That was back when it was Reverend Michael
Oh, yeah.
Desatel and
Yeah, that's right. I remember now.
Do you remember?
It's a deep YouTube dive these days.
Froze. Oh, we unfroze.
Yeah, this is the problem. This is why I wanted to work with trying to do webcam.
I understand, and then you were not pleased with the quality of any of the webcams, and we could. That'll just cause more trouble in the long run.
What?
Well, in the early days, we broadcast from the church because we had a designated Wi-Fi signal. But there's a certain level of convenience to being able to keep yelling at our children right up until we push the go live button.
There is a very, very good level. Oh
wow!
Oh, Brett will buy a Rev Heads T-shirt. That's awesome. All right, I'll work on designing something. So
we got our little logo.
We do.
We're brandable.
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you for joining us. I want you to go ahead, take a minute, share us out. Easiest way you'll ever invite somebody to something loosely related to church. And while you're doing that, getting comfortable, we're going to take the good, take the bad, take them both. And there we have the thing that makes Bree's eyes roll into the back of her head, the hacks of life.
It's not a life hack. I just assume.
Today's life hack for Friday, June 26th. Anxiety doesn't come from thinking about the future. It comes from trying to control it.
So, no. And also, no. I mean, to a certain extent, if you are feeling anxious, there's something to be said for what will be, the Lord willing. Take a deep breath. But that's still not always the case. Like sometimes we are anxious and that energy goes in a good direction and there's a reason we have it. And it's not to control the future, it's to react to the present. But there's also this thing called anxiety that is diagnosed and they treat it, and it's not just about like, hey, stop trying to control the future and you'll be fine. So the views expressed by the Life Hacks calendar do not necessarily reflect the views of your hosts.
So glad that everybody just got.
Do you remember we were dating? I used to smack you all the time.
Mm-hmm. I do remember.
And then I was told that I couldn't do that because once we got married, that would be considered abuse. and I still married you, honey.
and here we are, folks.
It's been 14 years since I smacked your head. Okay, but I've only smacked it like twice since we've been married. Okay, I do like love taps. That's not this. That doesn't count as like smack. It used to be a full.
Nobody believes you.
They do. Look at you. You can't feel it anyway. You had zero reaction. That's part of the thing. Is I'd smack you and like bruise my hand, and my hand is broken, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a mosquito? Did you touch me?" I didn't. I don't like you.
Yeah. All right.
Right.
So on this day in history, we're only doing one today because there's a lot of history with it. But on this date, June 26, 2015, same-sex marriage became legal nationwide. See, in 1971, just 2 years after the Stonewall riots that unofficially marked the beginning of the struggle for gay rights and marriage equality, the Minnesota Supreme Court had found same-sex marriage bans constitutional. a precedent which the Supreme Court had never challenged. As homosexuality gradually became more accepted in American culture, the conservative backlash was strong enough to force President Bill Clinton to sign the Defense of Marriage Act, prohibiting the recognition of same-sex marriages at the federal level into law in 1996. And then it was the struggle of a decade or more, well, a little more than a decade to get... sorry, I don't math. I don't math.
Well, so it's
96 to
interesting
2015
yeah. As United Methodists, so the United Methodist Church started in 1968. There was a merger between churches that created, that's why it's called the United Methodist Church. And you've heard, things were happening in the 60s. And as part of this conversation that was happening to the 1972, so the first general conference after the United Methodist Church was formed, people brought legislation that said, we need to say somewhere in our documents that regardless of sexuality, everyone is welcomed and loved and affirmed. And that people freaked out about that. And what came out of that instead was this statement that still stands in our Book of Discipline that says homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching. And we welcome everybody, but we don't really, which is sad because the intention was to come and say, we need to affirm and support people. And because of the fear, that was not the case. And we saw this play out in our denomination in 2016, where the intention was, well, 2016 and then 2018, the intention was, let's make a way to live together. And instead, what we got is hard cut. Anyway, it's our denomination has certainly paralleled this and unfortunately have not been the leaders, not even been the followers in a lot of cases. That's a conversation that still goes on.
No, but I do have to say, Bob mentioned that he became officially engaged, him and Kevin, 5 years ago today.
Wow.
And they've been together a lot longer than that, obviously. But I want to take this as there's a lot of history we talk about that is dark and difficult. This is one of those things I think we want to celebrate. It's one of those, like, okay, the law of the land now says it's okay, and it's getting everybody else to catch up and realize.
This was a fun conversation to have with our kids.
Yeah,
we have a lot of hard conversations with our kids. I think so. Braylee would have been a baby; she wasn't that into it. But with Michaela, and I think her reaction was probably sort of like, "Well, duh." Two people love each other, they should be able to get married. That was about the age, because Braylee was a baby, she was curious about babies and how, if a mom marries a mom, think of all the babies they could have. So we did have
it was
2015, 5 years ago.
That's I'm trying to remember, was it the same year Cheryl and Leslie got married, or was it the next summer? I think it might have been.
I think it was the next summer, because I think Braylee was walking by then.
If I remember correctly, like, Cheryl and Leslie were in Florida at Disney or something at the time, right? I don't know. Anyway, not important to any.
It's fun to be reminded in the midst of a world that is backsliding into the pits of hell. There's still some good stuff happening.
There is.
There's still some signs of hope. There are still some things that have not been able to be undone. Did you see that, like, in the middle of the night, the government is trying yet again to take away health care? You know, because we're in the midst of a pandemic. Why not take away health care from people? It's
Oh, sure. Okay, so you're on. Was it 2015? Was it that summer you guys got married?
5 years. It must have been. Well, Braylee walked early, I guess. She did. Actually, I do remember.
I remember going to the wedding, and it was like one of the most awesome weddings I've ever been to. So
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I had to be very careful.
You did, but you did good.
It was a lot of fun. Well, congratulations to you guys too. They got tired of waiting for the church to catch up.
Yep.
Which
I do not blame them.
We're still waiting. Which is interesting when you talk to people who think, maybe 92 they'll get it figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, surely by 96 they'll have it. Here we are.
Yep. Anyway,
Oh.
so congratulations to everybody who got engaged
5 years ago.
5 years ago
today.
today. That's awesome. We do have music today.
We do.
And
is it me?
it is not
Okay,
you.
good. I don't have my accordion.
It comes from Jantz Black, who is the music director at Orchard United Methodist Church over. I can't remember what the name of the town is that it is. Where's Amy at?
Where is Orchard? It's one of them places.
It's one of those places, suburb of Detroit, closer to Detroit than Ypsi. But anyway, Jantz is just amazing.
They do a lot of good stuff at Orchard.
They do.
Orchard.
One of the first times I remember meeting Jantz was at annual conference a year or two ago, and it was he did a message, but like dressed up as Mr. Rogers. Did the whole changing of the shoes thing, the whole bit. It was great. And so this is Jantz with All Things Bright and Beautiful. Ooh, thank you, Jantz.
So I used to take piano lessons.
Uh-huh.
And I realized I was never going to play like that.
Uh-huh.
happens. I don't take piano lessons anymore.
You know, I feel the same way when I sit down to try and like jam with Hayden.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
What I've been so I've been trying to do better with the kids than I did with myself. That it doesn't have to be perfect to still be good. Like just
Mhm.
because you're not going to be the Olympic champion at something doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's not worth doing.
That's very true.
But it's I'm so grateful for people who persist. And what's interesting is when you talk to some of these phenomenal musicians, they immediately point at somebody who in their mind is so much
Mhm.
head and shoulders above them. No, you know, I just play the hokey pokey, but they're really
Yeah. I
they
think
really know what they're doing.
in my head now, when gathering for concerts and events can happen again, I would really like to see Andy Song and Jantz Black do a concert
Do a
together.
piece together.
Just do a concert together.
I know, but wouldn't it be cool if they did like a four hands piece together?
Yeah, or like a dueling pianos thing.
Ooh, that would be cool. And then you can bring out Hayden. You could have Carl Gladstone come on. You could have it's like
now
now
it's getting too big in my head.
now I feel like in How I Met Your Mother, where he's trying to convince them to have a DJ because you can
Yeah.
have all these awesome
Uh-huh.
musicians play your wedding if you have a DJ instead of a wedding band.
It's the argument for the live stream over regular in-person worship. You
That
can
is
have all
true.
of the yeah. We continue in Common Prayer Liturgy for Ordinary Radicals. You can find it at commonprayer.net. You can also find it where you find books, but apparently
You are
not at liquor store.
So incredibly articulate.
I know,
It's amazing.
I know. Yeah.
Let's
pray.
let's
Can
pray.
I pray?
I don't know. Can you?
We'll see. Oh dear, sweet
Don't do
8
it.
pound 6
Don't do
ounce
it.
baby Jesus.
Oh, he got a beard. Okay, now I'm picturing a baby with a beard.
Me too. All right,
Mercy
gracious
on us.
gracious God, be with us this morning in our humor, in our seriousness, in our discussion, in our prayer, in our time together, and in our time apart. Help us to learn from you and from each other. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. It was fine, and then the baby with the beard came back. It's a line from there's a thing in a movie where the guy's praying to little baby Jesus and he's getting argued with. Jesus grew up, he lived a life, he had a beard, but I'm just picturing the little baby with the beard.
Baby with the beard. All right, here is our scripture for today.
Something different. Our reading for today is from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 12, verses 1 through 17. About that time, King Herod laid violent hands upon some who belonged to the church. He had James, the brother of John, killed with the sword. After he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the festival of unleavened bread. When he had seized him, he put him in prison and handed him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending to bring him out to the people after the Passover. While Peter was kept in prison, the church prayed fervently to God for him. The very night before Herod was going to bring him out, Peter, bound with 2 chains, was sleeping between 2 soldiers, while guards in front of the door were keeping watch over the prison. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He tapped Peter on the side and woke him, saying, "Get up quickly." And the chains fell off his wrists. The angel said to him, "Fasten your belt and put on your sandals." He did so. Then he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." Peter went out and followed him. He did not realize that what was happening with the angel's help was real. He thought he was seeing a vision. After they had passed the first and the second guard, they came before the iron gate leading into the city. It opened for them of its own accord, and they went outside and walked along a lane when suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hands of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting."
As soon as he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark, where many had gathered and were praying. When he knocked at the outer gate, a maid named Rhoda came to answer. On recognizing Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the gate, she ran in and announced that Peter was standing at the gate. They said to her, "You are out of your mind." But she insisted that it was so. They said, "It is his angel." Meanwhile, Peter continued knocking, and when they opened the gate, they saw him and were amazed. He motioned to them with his hand to be silent and described for them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he added, "Tell this to James and to the believers." Then he left and went to another place. This is the reading from Acts for us today.
Peter's a little bit like, Jesus can just show up and then go somewhere else. I'm going to do that too. Except he had to knock. He couldn't just go through the door.
Yeah. There are some pretty cool things happening in this passage. Like the maid gets named.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal. It's a kind of a sitcom bit too, right? Like she goes to answer the door, sees it's Peter, freaks out, doesn't let him in, runs back.
Ghost.
Oh.
But then she goes and tells them, "Hey, yo, it's Peter," and they're like, "No, it's a ghost." It's not a ghost though; it's his angel.
Yeah.
Which is nice. He doesn't even ever go in, really. They open the gate, they see him, they're amazed, and he's like, "Shh, God broke me out of prison. Tell James." And then he leaves.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for those not paying super close attention, the passage begins with James being killed. It's not the same James. There's more than one James. But
yeah.
But it's one of those that can be confusing. And why is this here? It's starting to drive home the ramping up of the persecution of the believers, of the Christians. Herod kills James, son of one of the sons of Zebedee, and the Jews like it, and they're like, and he's like, "Hey, let's do some more. Yeah. Let's throw Peter in prison. Let's." This is the definition of playing to your base.
Well,
right?
He doesn't kill Peter. He's like, "I'm gonna throw him in prison. Maybe after Passover, I let him out."
Is that what he said? I thought he was going to kill him after Passover.
Intending to bring him out to the people.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the people wanted him killed, I guess then it's the people's fault. So you have the ramping up of the persecution. Legit. But you also have like the deliverance in the midst of the persecution. Mm-hmm. Remember, the Acts is part 2 of Luke, which starts with Jesus saying, "I've come to bring release to the captives." and so here we have a captive who's captive because of his faith and literally is released from prison. Is that not always how the story plays out?
No.
But we see this played out here, this literal release. Obviously it worked out well for Peter in this instance that he escaped from prison. But I think for others who followed him to prison, and we do hear a lot of other stories about what happens when people are in prison, they don't all magically escape. But there's this sense that like God is still with them there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this understanding with the early Christians that the worst that Herod can do, the worst that the world can do to them is kill them. And that's not so bad. Like, it's not good, but it's not so bad because Jesus has conquered death. If I get to live, I get to keep telling people about Jesus. If I get to die, I get to go be with Jesus. It's okay either way. Which is a little weird to us. If you walked around on a normal day and said, I might die today, that's fine. Most people would worry about you. But there's a reality. This is a lot of what's at the core of the gospel, is this idea that we don't have to be afraid of what's going to happen, because either we get to keep serving God in this world and sharing love and loving people and doing good things and changing the world, or we get to go be with Jesus. It's the "it is well with my soul" piece. Whatever my lot, it is well with my soul. Isn't it Paul who says to live as Christ, to die as gain? Like, it's okay either way. Now, this is not, it's not a sense that what we do doesn't matter, but it is a sense that that fear can be relieved.
Mm-hmm.
You're making faces.
I'm not.
It's making faces.
No.
Like, oh boy, Bree's really going crazy today. How am I going to rein this back in?
Okay, so maybe I'm thinking that.
Well, no, don't. Part of the reason that so many, well, okay, so part of the reason that the early church survived, that the gospel spread, that we still know about Jesus and have these things called church communities today, is because the earliest Christians were not afraid to die for their faith.
Mm-hmm.
They were not afraid to be imprisoned. They were not afraid to suffer, because there are truths that are worth dying for.
Yes.
And more than that, they had this assurance that even if they die, that's not the end.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they die, that's not the end of the story. I'm simplifying it when I say go be with Jesus.
Yeah. Our life is more than our physicality.
Yes. And this is, see, I keep coming back to the children who say, well, I would deny Jesus out loud, but really I would still follow him in my heart. And then later I would ask him to forgive me. And I think a lot of us, right, if we were asked to suffer and die for our faith, might say, God, that can't be what God really wants. I would do what I had to do to survive and ask God to forgive me. And God forgives us. There's a lot of grace there. But if everyone had done that, then people would have said, well, look at those Christians. They're all talk. When you push them, they all go, no, I don't really believe in Jesus. I don't really believe that he conquered death. I don't really believe that he's with me no matter what. Yeah. The reason there's this saying, right, that the early church grew because it was watered with the blood of the martyrs. Mm-hmm. That was, I mean, there were two baptisms. You were baptized by water if you had the chance. And if you professed your faith and you were persecuted and killed before you could be baptized, that's okay. You had the greater baptism. You were baptized in your own blood. You literally followed Jesus to the cross. And this is the reason this is significant to me right now is because we live in a culture, we live in a church that is built so much on make me happy. Mm-hmm. Play the music that I want. Have church in the time slot that is most convenient for me. We live in a culture that is, I don't like that mask. It's uncomfortable. Never mind that it increases the chances of people around me surviving. The science doesn't say it necessarily increases my chance of surviving. So why would I? It's literally something we do to help other people stay alive. And we go, I don't really want to. That sounds like a conspiracy to me. We're not even willing to make small sacrifices so that other people can survive. And how far that is from love your neighbor as you love yourself. I have come to bring good news to the captives. I have come to set free those who are oppressed. I have come to bring the year of Jubilee when debts are forgiven. How far we have come from that. Yeah. We've come a long way from the heart of the early church. I think if Peter and James and Stephen came to visit our churches right now, they would be pretty shocked and appalled. Like, wait a minute. So you can profess your faith openly. You're free to worship any way you want to. and you're mad because every so often you have to think about maybe keeping other people alive. Like, it is completely the opposite.
Well,
of the world they
and we
lived in.
talked about it yesterday, right?
I don't remember yesterday.
The church in Antioch hears from a prophet
Mm-hmm.
that Judea is gonna have a famine, and they're like, well, let's send them some food.
Yeah.
Let's send them some money, some supplies, some things to help them get through. That is, I think that's probably what gets me in trouble with people is where I tend to seem to land politically has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with where I think Jesus would be.
Well, politics literally means how we live together. It's the life of the city. It's the life of the community. It's the difference here between, and I'm just painting broadly, and I love a lot of people, but between the impulse when everything shut down and you had this group in our community that said, our neighbors might be going hungry, let's build a food pantry. And then you have all kinds of churches whose leadership said, how are we going to pay the bills to keep our building going?
Mm-hmm.
I come back to part of the reason that Luther got, I remember Luther, 500 years ago, Luther started the Protestant Reformation. One of the criticisms Luther had of the Roman Catholic Church at the time was not just, there was this whole thing around indulgences, which is like, I can do really bad stuff and then pay to be forgiven for it, which is a great fundraising scheme, by the way. But he said that's
horrible fundraising scheme.
Raised a lot of money. Well, that, and also if your loved one died and you're not sure they got to heaven, you can pay the church to help get them to heaven sooner. And he had some pretty significant theological concerns with that. But he also said what that does, especially this idea of sort of paying your loved one into heaven, is it preys on people at their weakest and their most vulnerable. And you had folks who could barely afford food, but who were giving money to the church for the sake of their loved one who's dead. And he said that is the complete opposite of what the church should be doing. The church should be taking care of these people, not taking advantage of them, even if it means that St. Peter's Cathedral has to be sold so that people can be fed, because Jesus cares more about the people than about the buildings.
What?
I know. Now, I happen to pastor a church that worships in a phenomenal, historic, beautiful building. And I gush about that. I love taking people to that building for the first time, because you walk in and it's clearly like, this is a holy place. You are a part of a story that spans generations. You cannot not feel that. There is a spirit and a power in that place. But I wrestle with that, especially right now, right? The money's not coming in like it usually is. And even when it is, a lot of our budget goes to upkeep this beautiful historic building, which means we have fewer resources to invest in the ministry that's helping people in other ways besides, hey, here's a building. And I hear that voice of Luther sometimes saying the ministry is to the people, even if you have to sell the cathedral. And I'm not, if you're watching from first, I'm not saying sell the cathedral, but I'm saying we need to at least wrestle with and consider, where are our priorities? If there's a bill that goes unpaid, which bill is it? What is the priority? Are we prioritizing loving our neighbors? Are we prioritizing bringing good news to the hungry and to the poor? Are we prioritizing, let's keep the lights on in our empty building? Let's make sure our security system is still going so that no one can break in and take something that's ours. And again, this is way, way far removed from Peter knocking on the door, but
not really.
I still think there's a reality that we have become very far removed from the early church, and in some good ways. I'm kind of glad that when I teach my kids about Jesus, I'm not worried they're going to be stoned for it. But I hope that they're learning about Jesus in a way that they will cause a lot of trouble when they talk about Jesus. And when they say, my mom said you can call God she, and that's okay. That's a conversation we're having right now. And I'm glad they're coming to be like, oh yeah, it's okay. But I know they're going to get in trouble for that down the line. But I want them to be troublemaking Christians.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Maybe
that's-
not thrown into prison and executed, but I want them to have a faith that has some substance behind it, beyond just, boy, it's convenient and it's fun to go play games on Sunday morning.
Yeah, our oftentimes in my 20 plus years in ministry,
You're so old.
I know. I have often looked at the churches and wondered what would Paul, what would Peter, what would Jesus think if they walked in and they saw what we did and what we spent money on and what we prioritized. And the answers in my head are in that imaginary scenario are never good.
Yeah.
When I think about where Jesus would be right now, when I think about what Paul or Peter would be interested in doing right now in 21st century United States of America, it has zero to do with buildings and upkeep. Honestly,
unless that building happens to be a shelter,
right? Like
that is a home for the migrant children who.
Like I could see Jesus saying, "Oh, you have this building. You could put in a bunch of bunk beds and some extra bathrooms, and make a shelter for refugees and immigrants and homeless people, and you could do all." And I think about what would happen. And most of you that watch have been to some type of church committee meeting. What would happen if your pastor came in and said, "Hey, instead of having the sanctuary and the entire building set up like it is, what if we turn the whole thing into a shelter or a food pantry?" Or
we can have worship in the dining hall, because we have to leave a space for the dining hall.
Yeah. What if we did? Oh my gosh, people would lose their minds.
How would we upkeep the building if you aimed it at people who cannot afford to contribute to its costs?
And that's where I was starting to that's where I thought we were going to go today, is that cost of that. Herod, who sees the people get delighted at the death of James, who then throws Peter in prison and is getting ready to maybe execute him after Passover.
It's nice of him to wait till after Passover.
Well, because killing somebody on Passover is going to anger the Jews. I
don't know. They killed somebody on Passover a year or two ago, and then the Jews seemed okay with that.
Yeah, it was before sundown.
Oh.
See. Anyway. So no, what I'm saying is so if you understand
Passover
Herod,
and Sabbath aren't it's all right.
Anyway,
do tell.
Oh, we can have the conversation later. Anyway, Herod is a puppet king.
Yeah.
He is appointed by Rome. He's not the choice of the Jewish people. And so when he does something and they like it, he's like, well, let's do more.
Pandering.
We see this in certain politicians who get upset when their rallies aren't as full as they'd like.
We see this in every politician. We see this in a lot of pastors too, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do some things that make the people happy. Now I try to think of that as putting some money in the bank, so later when I do something that makes them angry, I'd be like, oh, like everything I do doesn't make you mad.
Yeah. But this is a result of that, just trying to keep the crowd, the masses, happy, without doing anything of real substance, without really changing anything. And that's it. And that's the problem we find ourselves in is the church in 2020. Is we focus on the wrong things. And we've been focusing on the wrong things for a long time. and we try to, as pastors, I know it's incremental change, because if we change too much too fast, if we push too hard too fast, people are going to get left behind. People aren't going to get it. People are going to be, too much into the culture of church shopping and faith as a commodity and those kinds of things. But when it gets down to it, the reason the church is in decline and has been for as long as it has been is because we've switched. Our worship is about form over substance. Our faith is about optics and appearance over actually being the church.
There's a saying, a story where somebody meets the pastor at the end of the service. They say, "I just didn't get a lot out of church today." And the pastor says, "Good, we weren't worshiping you."
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard shift for us.
It really is.
We need to wrap this up.
We should.
We've had lots of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a good time. Not so much for James, but
yeah,
Peter had a good day.
Why don't you pray?
All right. God, we continue to wrestle with what it means to be faithful to you in a complicated world. We give you thanks for those saints who've gone before us, for those who were willing to lay their lives down so the gospel could survive. As we continue to figure out what it means for us to deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow Christ in this world today, God, we ask that you would put aside our fear, that you would fill us with compassion, with a hunger and thirst for justice and righteousness, that you would give us the courage to believe that our lives are more than what we can see. Help us to love others at least as much as we love ourselves. And help our lives and our deaths to bring glory to you. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Well, folks, we'll be back on Monday. We'll be here Sunday for live stream worship at 9:30.
Different feeling.
Yes. And then Fun with Faith, we'll be back Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Zoom Bible studies will come back in mid-July, so please be watching for that. Tonight is a fellowship physical distancing socializing opportunity. We have the Jamaican Spice food truck that's going to be in the parking lot at St. Matthew's from 3 to 8 p.m. Please come check that out, get some dinner. I know some friends that are probably going to come, and some of them are going to eat dinner, and some of them are going to bring pizza because picky kids and whatnot. So, but please, I know. Please come check that out. Also, note down the dates and times. Usually Fridays, and usually in the 3 to 8 range. Dinner time. There is possibility of rain today, though my weather stuff says not too likely. But umbrellas, and it'll be what it'll be. Also, you'll notice in the show notes there is a link to a survey that Bree and I put together. Please take the time to fill that out. Let us know all of those things. Those are going to be good things, good helps, good metrics for us for the future of Fun with Faith and live stream worships and all those kinds of things. So please help us out with that. We appreciate that a lot. And you will see that Sunday if you're with us, and you'll see that probably all next week too.
You've noticed we don't do new things. We just use the same overlays.
Ouch. I change them sometimes.
It's the same spiel. Sometimes you change the date.
Ouch.
Or, if it's a new week, you move up which food truck's coming. I can give you a hard time because I literally just show up and look pretty. Ish.
Well, there you have it.
He does all the work. I just show up. which is the opposite of how it is in the rest of our marriage. So I don't feel too bad about it, quite frankly.
Wow.
Oh, sweetie, when's the last time you packed the kids to go anywhere?
I take them to Starbucks all the time.
That's not what I mean. Like, we're going on a trip. Who packs for the whole family and who gets up the morning we're leaving and going, I got some clean underwear, we're fine.
And with that, folks, all I have to say is it doesn't matter who packs the suitcases in your house. God loves you, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Oh, have a great weekend, everybody.
God bless.